The lessons that can be learned from Indian students visiting Australia, studying in Australia, and Australian students traveling to India are very straightforward. Experiences of Indian students in Australia are diverse. You cannot categorize them as purely positive or purely negative, and you have to look at different fields where the experiences the trends are positive, for certain areas where the experiences are negative. So there is a lot of scope for this research. My research talks a lot about the areas where the experiences have been positive and negative as well. But apart from this, the question is, when you do have negative experiences, how is it that Indian student migration is still increasing? It is pretty high in volume, and one of the major reasons is that there is no choice, because Australia right now, when it comes to their migration policies, providing permanent residency, have quite lenient policies compared to rest of the world. And also when it comes to the livability index, the standard of life, the GDP per capita, the stability of the government, the amenities provided, the support services provided, Australia stands out pretty well compared to many of the other countries. So despite a few negative experiences in certain fields, such as workplaces where a lot of exploitation takes place, or the increasing number of online modules and online training for which students are not prepared, they pay a high amount of fees, and they do not really expect a lot of online modules. They expect a lot of one-on-one interaction. Now, these are just a few pointers where experiences they tend to be a bit negative. But once again, why is the volume still increasing? What do we learn from it? What we're learning is, what is the main reason? The question that should be asked is, what is the main reason why Indian students are coming to Australia? One, is it purely for the educational standard, or is it because migration goals? These questions need to be explored, and then based on these questions we need to ask even more questions, and those are, if the experiences are increasingly getting a bit on the negative side, will these migrations still increase? Are they sustainable? If they are, on what grounds? If they are not, why not? If the experiences are increasingly negative and you see a high volume of students coming to Australia, what does it tell us? Where do we go from here? Will this trend continue in the same manner that it has been going on, or will reach a time when students will say, no, Australia is not the place to migrate, Australia is not the #1 country where we want to set our future goals, let's go back to the traditional United States, Canada and the UK, or let's explore newer countries like Singapore or Norway as well. So these things need to be taken into consideration. Moving forward, when it comes to policy making or planning of student mobility between India and Australia, I would highly encourage very specific tours that have a very straightforward purpose, and tours that look beyond just generic cultural understanding. Because there is no generic cultural understanding. You cannot simply visit a country, visit a few universities, visit a few places of worship or cultural places and say, well, you got a grasp, you got a hold of what the culture really is. The more specific you keep the tours, the more specific agenda is kept when it comes to touring or student exchange programs, the better it is. Let's take an example. Keep a very specific reason. You could have politics students visiting India to understand why a lot of, and this is one of my findings as well, why a lot of right-wing Indian students turn left-wingers when they come to Australia. Now, how does that happen? You have to read my thesis, of course, but this is an example of a very specific goal, of a very specific project that politics students in Australia could focus on when they travel to India. So it won't be a simple generic, tip of the iceberg cultural understanding experience, but it would be a much deeper understanding with a very particular purpose why students are traveling to India. As far as Indian students traveling to Australia is concerned, let's focus very much now. It's high time that we start focusing on the negative experiences students are receiving. I pointed out the two, there are lots, but I pointed out the two main ones that stand out through my research. One is what they expect through the educational institutions in Australia and what they actually receive. And this particularly pertains to the one-on-one, face-to-face time that is given to international students. And the second one, of course, is the backbone of the Australian economy, the part-time jobs, the small businesses which literally run the Australian economy, who are exploiting, which it's an open secret about the exploitation that takes place. You have Chinese students who get $5 to $6 per hour at their sushi bars. You have Indian students who get paid $10 to $11 at Indian restaurants. Why is this happening? This needs to stop. We need to put more time and energy into looking at these particular experiences and this phenomenon, because they may affect student mobility in the future. Thank you.